you're supposed to be a caregiver, provider. You're supposed to provide for, the woman, the children, and things like that. If you are not a responsible person, how can you hope to, provide for others if you can't provide for yourself?
If you love something enough, you're passionate about something enough, you're going to be disciplined with it. You're going to actually discipline yourself to do it. Discipline is self-love.
The question for today's episode will be, what are some foundational principles and attributes that every man should have? Today's guests include community educator and creator Rosxtta Fields and video creator and podcaster Sherman Gums.
So attributes that I feel like every man should have, I definitely think accountability is one, you know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people will find every reason to blame other people for why they're in a position they're in or why things are happening the way they're happening without looking inward and seeing that they themselves are the ones that put themselves in that position. You know what I'm saying? And even if, it's just a matter of owning up to your own mistakes, accountability is very important because it helps you develop and grow as a man, and it helps you to not make those same mistakes again, which a lot of people, are doing to repeat because they refuse to acknowledge that they are the reason that they are in that position or the mistake that was made. So definitely accountability is a big one in my book. And then I would say responsibility as well, because if you're not responsible, you know what I'm saying, you as a man, you know what I'm saying, as a caretaker, provider, if you follow the traditional, saying of what a man is, you're supposed to be a caregiver, provider, you're supposed to provide for, the woman, the children, and things like that. If you are not a responsible person, how can you hope to, provide for others if you can't provide for yourself? You know what I'm saying? So that responsibility and accountability, I think those are the two biggest attributes to have, because without those two, you're not really going to be much of a man, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? Obviously you can, learn those things and develop them over time, but they do need work. I'm still working on those things too. Everybody is constantly working and evolving on themselves through life. So for me, those are the two important ones.
What's the biggest challenge you face when it comes to developing those two? Because I feel like accountability and responsibility go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they do go hand in hand in the sense that, like, okay, I'm making sure that I'm responsible, even if it's something like, okay, I'm responsible for taking the trash out, you know what I'm saying? And then you miss the trash day, which is honestly one of the biggest L's as an adult, you know what I'm saying? You miss the trash day, how you sitting there, trash full of trash, piling up and stuff. So I would say, in not taking responsibility, you also have to hold yourself accountable for not taking responsibility, you know what I'm saying? So they do go hand in hand. But the first, I would say the most difficult thing in developing those two is probably finding, honestly, man, it's difficult to put into words, because, like, obviously if you know that you have responsibility to do something, you probably should do it. And if you don't do it, there's going to be ramifications if you don't do it. You know what I'm saying? The trash, for example, you got trash piled up, you're going to have to wait for another whole week to get the trash taken out. So I would say really the biggest problem is just setting a standard for yourself and making sure that you adhere to that standard. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes that can be difficult. Even like, what Rosxtta was saying with time management, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's setting a standard and making sure that you adhere to that standard and you hold yourself accountable to, take care of that. Because if you don't hold yourself accountable, nobody else is, So that's probably the most challenging part. Is holding yourself accountable.
Damn.
Rosxtta.
Anchor. Yes, sir. It's my time to answer.
Yeah.
My bad. I was soaking that up. Yeah, I got a few. We kind of jump around, but I wanted to make sure I didn't repeat what he said it too, because accountability and responsibility are definitely major foundations. I think for me, awareness is big. I'm kind of just go down my list. Awareness in the sense of like, sensitivity plays into this well, so aware of your emotions, aware of your strengths, aware of your weaknesses, your gaps, things that you need to build on, if you're a family man, being aware of what's going on in your family, aware of your partner, aware of things that's going on in your community. I feel like a lot of layers of being a man is just not about self. It's about how you are impacted and being impacted by your things that are around you. So in your environments, especially as men, we're leaders. We're change makers. We're disruptors. We're influencers. And this is not to say that our counterpart, the woman, is not, but even if you're thinking about this new soft season that we're in. We went out of hot girl summer, and I don't know if y'all seen the shift. It's about to be the soft summer. It's really interesting. And of course, this is also, as sorry if I'm assuming, but is everybody here heterosexual? Not to actually throw it out there, but I'm just trying to figure the framework.
Sir.
Okay,
Yes.
so we're all Black heterosexual men. So just coming from that framework, our counterpart would be, the woman, they're really in this space of, I want to be soft now. I need a man that's going to be strong, that's going to be the leader, that's going to be, not go in the kitchen and do this, but, in the sense of creating that safe space, and I think that takes awareness, that takes sensitivity. Respect is big, respecting yourself, and I think that goes to what Sherm said, is like, because if you respect yourself, you're going to hold yourself accountable. You're going to understand like what you need to do. And I think that's a lot of what I see, and it goes into respect and self-love, because somebody told me, one of my good friends, he had said something that was like, if you love something enough, you're passionate about something enough, you're going to be disciplined with it. You're going to actually discipline yourself to do it. Discipline is self-love. And that really just, shifted a lot about how I thought about, discipline has that negative connotation, but no, that's you loving yourself. That's you respecting yourself, that's you holding yourself accountable. I'm big into loyalty, loyalty not just to your family, to your friends, but to your community. That's one thing that I'm big with. Also to anything that you step into. So whether it be business, whether it be, a relationship, being loyal to that. Pretty much doing what you say you're going to do. Again, that's kind of all tying right in what Sharon was saying. So that's why I said that was a strong anchor. For me, being a man is about being a leader and a follower simultaneously. So being able to adapt in different spaces where you understand, okay, I need to lead now, but then in other spaces I need to follow. I need to shut the fuck up and get behind somebody else. And I think, not for real, bro. I'm speaking plainly, because some people can't do that. And they think being a man is always, I gotta always have my, my dick swinging per se, but it's like, nah, sometimes you need to shut the fuck up, because somebody else knows more than you. And I think a man is always aware of that, it's always somebody out there that's gonna be knowing more than you. You should always be seeking knowledge and seeking to get better, seeking to get stronger, seeking to get sharper. And if you're not, kind of being aware of your surroundings and who you're around, that's a challenge too, because a lot of men get complacent because they're not aware of who they're around. They're not aware, like, yo, it's time for me to shift. It's time for me to start putting in other people around me so I can get to that next level that I'm desiring to be on. Honesty is huge. I think that's one thing over the years, that's established. And I've realized in different relationships, being honest, being honest with yourself, but being honest with everybody you're with, being honest with who you project yourself to be and who you actually are, integrating those two. There's a lot of people out here, we have social media, different lifestyles, music, but there's a lot of people that project themselves, but when they really get around other men, who really are like, nigga, that's not who you are. That ain't it, because they're able to call it out because they're aware of it. That's why there's a lot of men who are very selective who they're around. I like to say they're very selective, the mirrors they put in their life, because people are mirrors. They're going to reflect certain things. They're going to show you who you are. But certain people like to put certain mirrors that are tinted, dirty, and you're not really seeing that true reflection. I like to keep mirrors in my life that's like, Ray, that ain't it right now. You said you wanted to get a PhD, get this and that. What you're doing right now is not lining up. Okay, life is hard, life is that, but what do we need to do to make sure you can still navigate in this space? Because again, nobody's gonna do it for you. Especially thinking about a Black man, nobody's saving us. That's just a fact. Like Sherm said, if you're not gonna realize that you got to do it for yourself, then you already lost. You already took that L. So those would be my kind of 5.
That was an incredible list you compiled.
Beautifully narrated as well.
Hell yeah.
It defended every point to a T. I don't see any holes in your argument. I really liked the quote that you said that men are disruptors, and I would like for you to expound on that a little bit. I understand it, but I want to get your take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been getting that title more and more, and at first I was a little cringy with it because I'm like, why do I have to be a disruptor? But it's in the sense of you being able to enter into a space, taking in what's going on, so not just going in and disrupting just to be loud and whatever, but like, no, you're taking in what's going on, you're perceiving it, you're observing, and then you're realizing there are places things could be better. There are gaps, and just being the usually, the presence of the strong Black men, especially a knowledgeable one, especially one with lived experience, especially one with passion. We're able to go into spaces and disrupt it, and it's not even a volatile thing. It could be the most gentle thing, but it's how you said it, it's when you said it, it's how you're walking, and I've been realizing, and more people have been highlighting how I've been disrupting spaces, and I didn't even realize what was going on. But if you take an outward step and just see how you're walking in your truth, and how you're impacting different spaces around you, that's disruption, and it's not a negative thing. It just is what it is, and it's what we do. And it's a beautiful thing to see. Like even in like a smaller sense, like when two Black men, like you ever in public, especially if they really know each other, when they dap each other up. I call it the Thunderclap of the gods. Like, cause if you ever like see like that, pow, whoa, like you would like, especially you're in like a white space, they're like, oh, what's going on? Like that's the literally, that's us showing literally we're here. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean we don't have to say much. We just dap each other. What's good, bro? And it's just that ripple effect in the pool. You know what I mean? So, and Black women do the same thing. It's beautiful when you see them step into a space. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. I hope I don't have to continue to disclaim our counterparts, but you know what I mean? We talk about Black men today, and that's what we talking about. So yeah, that disruption is key, man. It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Josh, what's on your mind?
I was just thinking about white people's reaction to the class.
Yo,
Bro,
what's going on? Like, what's
every time they think it's somebody about to fight or something.
Josh's favorite pastime is looking at white people get uncomfortable, man.
It's great though. It's a whole show. Yeah. Okay.
No, I agree with everything you said though. No. What did you say to say, Brian?
I'm just stuck on how powerful that was. The thunderclap of the gods. I want to hear Des your take on this.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you offered it up, because gentlemen before me, they've touched on a lot of my points, but I'm not afraid to more or less regurgitate or reiterate what they've said. A few of my foundational principles and kind of like a little bit of backstory behind why this question was even brought up was, as we were getting ready to put together our our game plan for season. This isn't season 6. Damn, we getting old, man. God damn. But no, as we were putting together our game plan for season 6, we really wanted to get out of the theoretical space and get more into the reality, the applicable, what we're talking about. How can it really be digested and provoke change? And so just as I get into my space, like my disruptive space, as as Rosxtta was saying, I resonated with that 100%, but I didn't get into my disruptive space until the past 12 months. And I felt like a lot of that was like understanding who I am as a person, because as he was saying, when you're hanging around people that those mirrors, those rose tinted mirrors that are in your corner, if there's no accountability, gentlemen, not to put y'all on the spot, I got 29 or 28. I ain't gonna give myself an extra. I got 28 years on the earth, but a lot of my teenage and my younger 20s, like accountability wasn't a thing. So I never really truly understood who I was as a person. you know, some of those principles and that came from, you know, my struggles as a young man trying to figure out who I was. You know, I realized how important accountability is. And it's not even accountability in the sense of, you know, responsibility. It's accountability in the sense of I understood how my actions affected this person, and I understand how their actions as a result are affecting me. So it's now getting into that space of being able to forgive without hearing I'm sorry. Like that's part of, to me, accountability, to where I can really truly acknowledge that I may not have swung the hardest, but I still swung.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that was a big thing as far as accountability, or me really taking on the importance of accountability. Number two is resiliency. I think it is, you know, really understated how every day is a failure. And every day is a failure because there's always tomorrow, and there's another chance to be great. Even if you had a very successful day, you can point out one or two things that you failed at.
Mm-hmm.
And even within that, you know, it's an opportunity to get better. And so, you know, failure to me really came with them, like as I started day trading. I picked up day trading in, you know, 2019, you know, when I started at ADP, my mentor, he came up to me and said, you know, I really don't need this job. My mentor just told me to get this job so I could understand the value of money. Because when you're day trading, you make money every single day. It's not really a cap on what you can make. And when I heard that, bro, you know, my son was 2 years old at the time. I'm like, damn, I have to be here. Like, I have to be here. And he's here just based off of choice. And so, you know, I really honed in with him. He taught me a bit of the technical stuff. But I will say, even as you become a very technically gifted trader, you know, psychology is a big. It's a 90% part of the trading field. And psychology is just simply your psychology. How are you wired? Can you hold yourself accountable? Can you be disciplined? Can you be resilient? Can you take L after L after L and then come in, get that one dub, and then use that W to you know, build on top of that? And then if you take an L, you have enough W's lined up to where you're no longer in this space of like just swinging for the fences. You can go in and you can digest that L, and that's where the accountability comes back. What did I do wrong to where this L is the result that I got? Another one, and I think this is probably the biggest one, especially as Black men, is spiritual grounding. And I say spiritual grounding not in the sense of religion, but just understanding that there is always a higher power, whether it be your God, whether it be Allah, whether it be the universe, whether it be your chakras, whatever it is. I think spiritual grounding is a very key component in finding your purpose. Because I think once you figure out what it is you're on this earth for, you no longer live in fear. The only fear you really have is fear of running out of time. And then a few other components, I think: provider, creator, educator, and then of course being disciplined. I think it's really important to be the educator and the creator, because I think as a man, it's not even I think, I'll speak indefinite. As a man, you should be the first field of education for not only your kids, but your woman as well. You know, if they're getting all of their information from CNN, CNBC, Shade Room, the kids' main field of education is coming from, you know, the school system, they're not going to be any better than any of their peers to their right or to their left. So there's times where you have to be that innovator, that maverick, to go in and seek knowledge that is outside of the norm, but is still valid, isn't some shit that's, you know, flung to the wall and just so happen to stick the longest. It's true knowledge, true education, to where it's providing different perspectives, because that's all life is. All five of us have different perspectives on life, but we can come together and we can have this, you know, this masterful conversation that, you know, it's inspiring, because that's what it is. I mean, you know, Sherman, Rosxtta, we all have the same, you know, key attributes, key principles, key foundational pieces, but what it looks like on each of us is different. Still the same definition, but in that field, it's all different. And I think that's very beautiful. And of course, as I mentioned before we came on the air, you know, discipline is, I really think, even above all everything else I said thus far, is the most important piece. Because if you are not disciplined with your time, somebody is going to be disciplined with that time for you. Schedules are going to be made. You will have to follow them. Money is going to be attached. You need that money, so you're going to follow those schedules. So
that is, I mean, so true.
So, You know, you have to be masterful with your time. And I think, you know, the very, first piece of being masterful with your time is, you know, becoming disciplined. You'll appreciate it more.
I'm glad you touched on your journey with trading. And I'm in the beginning part of the day trading, swing trading process, long term, very familiar with. But one of the things that we have been having an ongoing conversation with is the parallels between trading psychology and self-psychology. And so as someone who's read both Money Master the Game and then also Trading in the Zone, I want you to, could you explain a little bit more to viewers why there's so much one and the same in the parallels between the two?
Trading exposes all your faults. You cannot lie to the charts. You cannot say, oh, I see this going this way, and I press buy as it's going up, and then price immediately reverses, and I'm still holding that buy. That's arrogance. That is the unmitigated gall to think that you are going to sit here and predict the market. You're not even a main player in the market. It's the same thing as the universe. You're not even a main cog in the ignition in the universe until you put in the work to become that main cog. Just because we can talk really well, just because we can produce really good at, you know, thoughts and theories, it means nothing until we get in front of the microphones, or we get in front of the people, we get in front of the children, and we start to inspire that change. You know, a few other key components. I mean, trading really shows you how bad you are with money. If you're in the realm of trading just for the money, you are going to fail on day one. You're going to fail on day 1,271 because it is a true technical skill. And you can sit there and you can apply that to your real life stuff. You may not enjoy your job, but there's components in that job that can make it enjoyable. You may not enjoy video editing, you may not enjoy music, but you find components within that to make it enjoyable. Because let's be honest, even though you may love being a creator, it's a long, drawn out process. So you really have to sit there and you have to learn how to fall in love with the processes. And it's not just going to be pressing buy and sell. It's going to be the 3 hours that you put in after you just worked an 8 or 9 hour shift, you know, honing your technicals to become way more disciplined. And as a result of that discipline, you respect your money more. Because if you just bullshit in and you make $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, you're going to lose it the very next day. But if it is a very calculated, methodical $4,000 that you made, that $4,000 is going to turn into 8. That 8 is going to turn into 16. That 16 is going to turn into 32. And it's going to be very, very calculated. That is just how life works. If you go into that job, you go into wherever you go. It doesn't always have to be a job. You go into the school and you're speaking from a place of like true purpose. It's going to multiply with them kids. When you're at work and you're talking to your colleagues and you're speaking from a place of purpose, it's going to multiply with them. You're going to rally the troops almost. And so I think, you know, just, I don't want to say it in the sense of everyone that gets into trading is going to have that same mindset. I think that trading really just showed me who I was as a person. Like I've always said, I felt my true calling was to be a mentor of some sort. And it didn't have to be mentoring and trading it, because I've gone to school. I have my degree in political science and philosophy. I always saw myself, you know, being an advocate for somebody. That's a lawyer. So, you know, I do see myself fulfilling that in some way, but trading has just, I guess you could say, expedited my curve to get there a lot quicker.
You found that track.
Yes, sir.
Really, for me, when it comes to foundation principles I feel every man should have, I believe one of them should be having a mission for self. And when I say mission for self, I mean working on whatever you're generally interested in the pursuit to finding your purpose. Basically something like what Des said, whether that's podcasting, gaming, working out, or trading, or creating, or simply taking care of your family. And I say mission for self because I feel a lot of men become distracted in this society, whether it's from chasing women or chasing money or even chasing ego. And it takes away from not only the mission for self, but also finding your own purpose. And because you're more focused on getting the girl. And I gotta say, because if you're chasing the girl, it's already a recipe for disaster. I'm gonna just say that. Or because you're more focused on attaining money rather than just to obtain meaningless material items, or because you're chasing respect from others. And as an example of a person having a mission for self, I think of Kobe Bryant. He made a deal with himself at 13 or 14 to work at it, and and become the best basketball player he could be. He wasn't chasing women, he wasn't doing it for the money, and he wasn't doing it for the ego. And he was genuinely interested in basketball, made it his mission to be the best he can be. And by doing that, he found his purpose. So that's why I say having a mission for self should be a foundation principle every man should have. And as far as attributes every man should possess, I believe one of them should be confidence. And I say confidence because you can achieve a lot with the right amount of confidence, even if you're not fully equipped for it. Like when Jay-Z said, half the time I got it right, I probably guess. He's not just saying he's so genius that even when he guesses, sometimes he even gets it right. It's also the fact that he had the confidence to even do it, even if he didn't always know what he was actually doing. So that's why I say confidence. And then the other attribute I had really was understanding. And I say understanding because as men who hold the most power in society, understanding is an important attribute to have, because if the person at the top of the hierarchy have the ability to assimilate new information and continually refine their own worldview, then it would help progress society in a more positive direction. But people at the top of the white power structure lack understanding, and mainly because they only care about money. So that's what I really had. You like I threw that in there, Des?
Yeah, man. Yeah, you never disappoint. I do want a rebuttal though. I don't even want a rebuttal. I want to go a little bit more into detail. Your number one is more or less find their purpose and mission. And I want to know what that looks like for you, because in a way, as a listener, that's a blanket statement. You know, nobody wants to struggle. Nobody wants to be broke. Nobody wants to be miserable. But we find ourselves in these broken situations, these miserable situations, myself included. Assuming you're speaking from a place of like, I have now found my purpose. I'm on my mission for life. What were things that you did to arrive at that? Like, because I'm pretty sure there was a lot of, redundant days of suffering and struggling that built that confidence. Because I don't think confidence out of thin air is true confidence. I think confidence comes from, repetitive doing something over and over and over again. Even if you're a professional bullshitter, you've bullshitted enough times so you have confidence in your bullshit. So I want to know what that looks like for you, because me just knowing you as a person, you're very genuine, down to earth. You are very honest, and so I want to know what that looks like for you, as far as things that you did to find your purpose and to get in line or get on track with your mission.
Really, I think if anybody know me, they know I'm more of a Huey Freeman type of person, a revolutionary type of person who really care about Black people and Black people's rights. So when I was in high school, I was really big on that. I was really big on the Black Panthers. Like, I was the only one going around Great Bridge High School. Great Bridge High School, which is a predominantly white high school, like Grassfield does. I was the only one going around that high school with a Black Power Malcolm X shirt on, making a whole bunch of people uncomfortable.
Disruption.
Yep. And really, the funny thing is, at a predominantly white high school, the kickback I got was more from Black people. More like from the Black people I was going around saying like, oh, you shouldn't be wearing that or something like that, or that time is over with. So really, as I was basically finding who I was as a person in high school, I really like moved away from that revolutionary lifestyle, because I came to a mindset of, it's kind of like, what am I gonna do? I can't get to these people because for whatever reason, right? I can't get to Black people to say like, this is what we should be doing, we should be uniting, but they're more of a complacent mindset. So I really moved away from that. And as I was like, went into more chasing girls and at the end of high school and more into college, I was just became really in a bad place, because I felt I moved way from my own mission for self because I started chasing women. I started looking for whatever to boost my own ego instead of actually going towards my own mission. But as I'm close to almost 30 years old now, I think the Kyrie Irving situation really kind of made me like go back and be like, you know what? I'm kind of done with this. I'm going to go back and go back to my stance no matter what, and actually have the confidence to stand by it instead of just shying away. So that was it was really a long drawn out process from a point of being derailed in high school to the point, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this, to the point now I'm almost 29, I'm almost 30 years old. Maybe I should get back on this because nothing has really changed since I've been in high school. And now I'm more knowledgeable on how Black people think as far as their own traumas. So now I have more of an understanding of, oh, okay, this is how it works. This is why we still haven't gotten anywhere, whether it's brainwashing or whatever the tool. So it was really a long drawn out process. And what I did too, I followed everything I was genuinely interested in. Like, you got to find what you're really genuinely interested in. I'm genuinely interested in Black rights. I've been interested in Black rights since, hopefully everybody should be, of course, but I've been interested in Black rights since I've been very little. Remember watching Malcolm X since I was very little. So it was really just finding what I was genuinely interested in and further going on to that. One of the other things I'm genuinely interested in is editing. So I have another mission of getting my YouTube channel and getting the Infusion Breakdown Network up and going, and making sure producing quality content for the viewers. So it was really just a long drawn out process of, it's like a road, Yeah.
Getting back in touch with your inner child, basically. That's all really in a nutshell. It's just not necessarily well, I mean, there's trials and tribulations and trivia. I mean, not trivia. Trials and tribulations with anything to get to where you want to go. But it really just seemed like self-sabotage. And I think self-sabotage, as tough as it is easier to get back on track through self-sabotage than it is from, manipulation from outside forces. Because self-sabotage, from what you said, it sounded like you were able to retrace your steps. And of course, as you retrace your steps, that's just recollection, thinking about everything you've done, meditation in a sense, and being able to reconcile, create your own closure with every single thing you did, all the fuck ups you did. You were able to, reconcile that, create your own closure. And then once you hit that point, like I say now, I am who my 19-year-old self thought he was.
Damn.
And so, no, facts. Like, I remember I was sitting down with my mom over Christmas break, and I was like, when I just look at everything I've done and how I handled it, like I thought I was handling things, 10 years ago now, or 9 years ago, how I was doing now, and it was like the complete opposite. And so when I asked you that question, I thought you were going to say rereading the Autobiography of Malcolm X, because we talked about that back in December as well, where we both read it. You probably read it before I did, but I read it back in like 2013, 2012, like right after I graduated high school. And I just remember saying to you that, like, I didn't appreciate it back then. Like, and the reason why I say I didn't appreciate it is because it takes a lot, especially from a man, to be very raw. And the Autobiography of Malcolm X is a very raw book. Like, you see someone at their lowest point in everything they did to get to, that revolutionary figure that they are. And so it really, your story, I'm not going to, obviously I don't want to put you too high on that pedestal yet, because then that means you gotta fulfill it. But it reminded me of that particular conversation, because as we talked in December, and I was like, yeah, rereading it now, like just being able to piece things that Malcolm did, and then seeing the same exact issues that Malcolm was going through, how it was always the divide between Black folks and the Jews. And I lied to you not, it literally happened like the same. I think Josh and I had this conversation the same week Kyrie Irving was talking about that one document. I can't remember what it is. Black Hebrew documentary on Amazon. And it was like literally things were lining up as we're putting in. I don't want to say we're putting in work, because it's not deliberate work like on our end, but we're kind of just, stepping into ourselves, and things are just falling into place as we step into ourselves. So yeah, that's really what I take from it.
I don't know why, but that was just the last straw for me. I was just like, you know what, I'm done. I'm done being quiet. I gotta say what I have to say. But yeah, it was something about that though, and it was just like I really got away from what I was in high school, and I was just always thinking about that. But yeah.
I think the biography or autobiography that really touched me, speaking about like Black liberation and, you know, ethnic identity, was definitely Nigga by Gregory. So yeah, that one got me more so because it was like, you know, I mean, similar to Malcolm X's story, you know, these people that didn't really believe they were going to be revolutionaries that kind of like transition, you know, but Gregory's story is really interesting because I feel like he was just so open with like, bro, I'm not trying to fuck with these niggas. Like, I'm about my money. I'm moving up north. I don't care about this Black struggle. And it was just really interesting to see that perspective. And that's not something that I reflected with, but I know a lot of people do, especially in contemporary times. There's a lot of people that are about self and they're just about like, nah, I'm gonna get my money together, get my credit right. I'm gonna do this, you know, I'm gonna get my stuff together. I'm gonna have my family good and fuck everything else that's going on. Just not really understanding kind of like that Emmett Till effect, you know, no matter how much, you know, you're really trying to do, you know, I remember Emmett Till's mom saying like, we tried our best to like stay away from that and do what we could, moving up here and doing like, and it just doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So just reflecting on that, if the community not good, we will never be good as Black men, you know, and that's something that I've challenged myself on. And that's kind of continuously allowed me to, because I've had times like that too, Josh, where I've kind of veered off the path a little bit and just focused on other things. Like, fuck it, I'm a party, I'm a have, you know, all of these sexual experiences, I'm gonna do different things, you know, I'm gonna just focus on my education and shit like that. But it's like continuously looking back on the community and also understanding how it's impacting my mental health as well and the mental health of those around me. Because I don't know if y'all know, like, but like the rate of suicide rates within Black men right now is crazy. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. And then, you know, that's just compounded with heart disease, you know what I mean? With, you know what I mean, other mental health concerns that we go through, compounded with the prison system, compounded with police terrorism, you know what I mean? So kind of think about endangered species, shit, that's what we are right now. Like, no cap, if you really think about it. Like, the Black men that are really trying to do things, trying to focus, trying to go about a certain type of way, you know what I mean? Just all of us as a whole, you know, are being attacked. So that's something that's always been in the back of my mind, and I appreciate y'all for talking about mental health because, you know, that's my wheelhouse. So I'm glad that more and more people are aware about it and integrating it in different ways.
Sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
But no, I was gonna really what my pondering thought was that, you know, as Rosxtta was talking about, you know, as Black folks, we kind of get into that fuck everyone else, it's about me phase where you're really focusing on your money, you're focusing on your credit, you're doing all this, and it just makes me, it made me laugh a bit because that's where I'm at right now. I'm not even gonna, you know, I ain't gonna beat around the bush. And so as he said it, you know, it really made me have a couple flashbacks because I know we've had a prior conversation about, you know, just, it's not even the thought, it's the reality that finance is one of the leading, you know, causes behind divorce. And I think that when we think about Black men, Black women, our inability to be independent and understanding what our finances doesn't just hurt the union, it hurts the, you know, the fruits of that union as well, the children, the land, the home, the diet. I mean, everything, like we're talking about mental health. I think one of the key components of mental health is the diet. So, you know, and it kind of, it really brings Josh into this as well. How do we combat the financial illiteracy? How do we combat the financial illiteracy rate to where we essentially stem this from happening? Because if it becomes part of our everyday life, as far as like as a child, you know, I always had a checking account, but as soon as I got, you know, money put in that checking account as a kid, man, I was blowing through that shit. So how do we as like Black folks, how do we integrate this financial literacy piece into just like we'll say black infrastructure, like the black family, to where we no longer have this period in life to where our latter 20s are spent, you know, fixing the fuck ups from our early 20s and late teens, because we got that first credit card $1,000 limit and we max it out in the first 2 weeks. So has anybody ever like really thought about that? What do we do to bridge that gap? Because it's a foundational piece, if we're being honest.
I think it starts at home, man. Honestly,
Yeah.
because I mean,
Was that Sherman?
so I think it starts in the home, honestly, because I mean, we can't count on the school system to teach the kids that. You know what I'm saying? Like this, the school system, they learn about, you know, blanketed history. You know, they've always been learning about blanketed history. You know, and it's going to stay that way unless, you know, some major changes come down the pipeline, which the school is not going to get the funding for. You know what I'm saying? Not anytime soon, at least. I mean, I feel like, not to get too political about it, but I feel like the country does not value the teachers, because the teachers ultimately are the people that mold and shape the future members of society. You know what I'm saying? If they're not getting the proper knowledge that they need, society is going to be doomed to fail. So I feel like it starts in the household. You know what I'm saying? Like the parents are going to have to put in those extra hours to teach their kids, like, hey, this is the value of a dollar. This is how you can stretch the value of a dollar. This is how you can invest. This is how you can diversify your portfolio. This is how you can do, like saying, teach them about Roth IRAs, teach them about, you know, real estate, whatever it is that you do to make money on the side. You know what I'm saying? Or you can teach them like those principles that you were talking about earlier, you know, whether it's discipline, accountability. You can teach them, okay, yeah, you can be disciplined. You know, got a lawnmower, you can go house to house, cut people's grasses, get some money, you know what I'm saying? And then when you get that money, I'll show you how to invest that money into, you know, I don't know, like a dividend, not a dividend, but a savings account that pays you. Yeah, or a bank account, a savings account that pays you for leaving your money in for a set amount of time. I forgot what the specific terminology is. But yeah, so you put your money in for like, you know, 12 months or whatever. It's not getting touched, and their kids not touching it anyway. So now they're compounding interest on that money, and you show them, okay, this is the rate of growth that you're going to get this money on. So say you put in $1,000, you got a 4%, you know, growth over a year. That's going to give you 1,000 and, you know, 100 or whatever that comes out. You know what I'm saying? So I think those fundamental lessons start at home. And as, you know, I feel like Black people are a lot further than what we were. Like, obviously there's still, you know, leaps and bounds to be made. There's still boundaries that are set in place that we need to overcome. However, obviously we're in a lot better of a position than we were in the 70s. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I feel like a lot more Black people are becoming wealthy, and I feel like a lot more Black people are becoming more literate when it comes to how to manage money and how to make money. So, you know, it's a generational change. You know what I'm saying? It's not something that's going to happen overnight. That's for sure.
You know, as you said that, you mentioned you were very key on this, how we're not where we once were, in a good sense. And it really made me think about like the prize horse that has like those goggles over their eyes to like prevent them from, and I mean, that's really what Black folks are. Like, when you think about the innovation and you just think about how quickly we bridge gaps once we get information. Like, I hate to, you know, provide that correlation, like comparing Black folks to these prize horse racers or prize horses, but like that's really what they are. Like, you put those black goggles to essentially blind them, to keep them, you know, in an area for a specific, you know, period of time. And then once it's time for that race, you know, you peel back that little circle to where they just see tunnel vision, and then you get stuck in that, you know, straight line, that like almost crabs in the barrel mentality. But yeah, okay, we definitely touched on that. It was very beautifully said. And another piece I wrote down as you were talking, it was I really wrote down, humble yourself enough to not be afraid to learn something new, and to not, you know, admit your faults in front of your kids, because I think that is a very big thing with parents, not, you know, knowing when to say I'm wrong, and not understanding just how impactful kids hearing their parents say I was wrong about something, like how impactful that is. I think it, you know, parents have this like perspective that maybe it takes that superhero or, you know, whatever veil, it removes that veil. But I think the sooner you remove it, the sooner you introduce them to reality, and the sooner you introduce them to reality, the better they're going to be able to navigate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish my parents, were so willing. And I was the first child, you know what I'm saying? So obviously I was the trial run. I was the trial period, you know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, I think that's a big thing too, man. And that falls on accountability too, is being able to acknowledge to your children when you're wrong. I don't have kids, but, growing up and reflecting on, some of the traumas I would say that I had growing up, and, I learned what not to do, you know what I'm saying, based off of what my parents did do. So I was like, okay, when I do have a child, this is what I would like to do. This is the type of discipline I would like to instill. And I feel like obviously saying it is easier than doing it, but having that mind state that, you can show your kids that you're not perfect, because nobody's perfect. You know what I'm saying? And then I feel like that kind of helps alleviate the child too, because now the child doesn't have that expectation that they have to be perfect. They acknowledge it's okay to fail. They acknowledge it's okay to be wrong. However, taking accountability for being wrong and taking accountability for not meeting your standards is going to help you be better in the future. So I feel like if they understand those principles, they'll take leaps and bounds, moving forward.
So I don't want to detract from everything that you all have said. I've taken a tremendous amount of information. I've been taking notes the entire time, and it's been an absolute pleasure to have both of you brothers on here, and then my other brothers, Josh and Des, as usual. And I agree with everything that you have said, just as a general preface, but I think there's something very important that was touched on and not fully developed. So first, as Black men in our community, I'm looking through that lens from the perspective of being a leader. That's super important. So it's no secret that many thought leaders within our community and across all spaces focus so heavily on speech, the ability to speak. In fact, part of the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, be impeccable with your word, and then one of Jordan Peterson's rules from 12 Rules of Life, tell the truth, or at least don't lie. So there's heavy emphasis on the idea of speech. And I want to dissect that and talk a little bit about why that is so profound. Speech is the vehicle by which we are able to shape our reality. Through what I say, I have the ability to influence the world that you and I share. And the whole idea between being impeccable with your word is not to commit sin against yourself, not to speak fallibly in that way. And I think as Black men, as leaders, it's more important than ever for us to step up and accept that mantle as the head of the household, as the leaders in our community. And it starts there with being congruent in what we say and what we do, and then also the subsequent actions that follow from that. So I want to start with that. And then also through the lens of Black men in our community, I know that the most important skill for a man to possess is sexual discipline. And I can talk about why. It's because it's the most common way that we sabotage ourselves. And I'm not saying don't partake. I mean, I like sex just as much as anybody else does, maybe more. But the point is, that is the single most problematic thing within our community, I feel like, because if a man doesn't understand himself and he's going into a relationship and creating broken homes, and then also bringing children to the world before he's ready to do that. And I think that's one of the most problematic things, because it creates a cycle and it exacerbates it. And it's a compounding effect. And I think once you have sexual discipline and understanding that you don't have to pursue that first and foremost. I mean, like I said, your purpose should come first. But when you understand the proper precedence between balancing yourself, your purpose, your relationships, that kind of thing, everything falls into place. And I don't think that that's something that's commonly discussed, in particular within certain circles. And by certain circles, I mean in our community. I don't think there's a lot of emphasis on it. I think that it's one of the things that may be taught to us when we're younger, but it's not fully explained about the actual gravity that it has. Because as Black people, we understand how hard it is. We understand the obstacles that we face. And with that single decision, it's a decision. With that decision, we have the opportunity or we make it harder for ourselves. And I'm saying that's the single most destructive thing that we can do, is to not practice sexual discipline.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
I agree. How many guys have you known that didn't have sexual discipline?
Didn't have sexual, man. So I don't want to call anybody out. But someone that I know, this was when I was in college, and we had a conversation, and he came up to me, and he wasn't in school, but he told me, he said, I don't see how you do it. And he was pretty much saying if he went to college, all he would be doing was having sex, was fucking. And don't get me wrong, like a lot of people, there's a lot of sex at college, but that's not what you're there for ultimately. And just, I was so repulsed by what he said. Like, he couldn't control himself. He was saying that he knew himself, that he couldn't control himself, even though he would be hypothetically going somewhere in pursuit of a future, a skill set to advance his life. So that was really eye-opening. And that was maybe freshman, sophomore year. And I went back, and when I was back home, and we had that conversation, and it just showed the difference in the mindset. Like, Josh, we both know we partook in the social activities, the partying and things like that back in school, but it was never on my itinerary to knock somebody up. To him, he was just saying, basically, if he went, that's what was going to happen.
Shoot for the stars, right?
What's up?
Oh, no.
He said, shoot for the stars. He's shooting for something. But it's, like I said, the amount of discipline or the lack thereof is extremely common. It depends. Like, I feel like in my personal circle, the people that I directly associate with, you guys are some upstanding men that have discipline and are moving forward in the right direction in life in general. But in terms of the greater society, I do feel like that does affect a large portion of us.
Mm-hmm.
So self-sabotage.
So for the men listening with that problem, how would you practice sexual discipline exactly?
I mean, just think about it. Is that let's be generous. Is that half hour worth the rest of your life?
I don't even want to look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, that's
No.
That's reductionist though.
Hear me out.
That's reductionist, because whatever you practice safe sex, and it's like that ain't, you know what I mean? So like you gotta add layers, because there's people out here that's moving real smart.
Yeah.
They're not having kids, they're not having STDs, but
that's not what I'm talking about.
Themselves.
That's a half hour is generous for some people.
Man,
but see,
I hope niggas out here lasting more than a half hour, because first of all, if it is only a half hour, that's what you should be focusing on. You need to go do some other things and get your shit together. Half an hour.
But see, Ray, I'm not talking specifically on regular safe sex. That I'm saying, like, you should take that seriously with passing on your seed. That's the part.
Oh, okay. So you're not just talking about like safe sex in general. Like I thought you were just talking about sexual activity in general, like sexual, like your.
I mean, that's important too, but I'm more concerned about the passing on your seed, because.
Are you talking about just moving wild in these streets?
Yes. So because looking from an objective standpoint, as men and women, there is no greater gift or privilege than to allow a woman to carry your seed. And then on the converse, there is no greater gift for a woman to allow you to give her your seed. And so I think a lot of people squander that. They don't take it as seriously as they should.
Yeah.
So wait, so you feel the people that you know are actively trying to get women pregnant through sex, or is their focus getting
just
pregnant, or is it just
it's not avoidant. Yeah, it's
just a not avoidant.
Negligence. Yes.
Yeah. Lack of awareness.
So basically, you're saying understanding the depth and implications of what
Correct.
not pulling out is, and how
Correct.
important that is, as far as like what the responsibilities come with it. Like, okay, you are now bringing another being into this existence, and you're going to have a obligation to them to raise them and make a productive member of society.
Correct.
Gotcha.
See, and one example of this, Josh, to the point of negligence that I was looking to illustrate, and thank you guys for the shared team assist for us constructing that argument, or constructing that there, because I think there was a little bit of a disconnect. But there was a conversation I had with somebody who got his girlfriend pregnant, and this was a few years ago. And so he said that he didn't want to have a child. And so I asked him, was y'all using condoms? He said, nah. He said, I asked him, I said, was she on birth control? He said, nah. I said, so what you think was gonna happen? And it was, to make it even worse, it was after she had already had a miscarriage. So she had already gotten pregnant before, and then she got pregnant again, and he never wanted a child with her.
It's quite a predicament.
That's the kind of negligence I'm talking about.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Is his father in his life?
I don't know him that well.
Because that's one thread that I've been finding, you know, and that's just, if we're talking about, you know, black men, black fathers, you know, that's a thing, you know, that's a major thing is, you know, who's in his life, what men in his life, you know, what are they modeling, you know, how do they treat women, you know, how do they treat themselves, how are they treating their children, you know, how are they projecting what it is to have a family, the responsibility and accountability of bringing children into the world. So unfortunately, a lot of these men and these youth, and I think somebody has said it, I think it was Sherm, the home, you know, getting back in the home and getting back into that understanding of not just the home, but also the community. You know what I mean? Like, I think, you know, just taking it on, because as I said here and was objectively thinking about this, you know, I think one, you know, just being honest, because obviously we're not going to be able to talk about the entire black experience and all black men and every black family is just not possible. So one thing I think we have to contextualize is we are talking from a place of privilege, especially when you're talking about, you know, shifting your finances and shifting how you think about certain things. That's a strong place of privilege. We just have to identify that. There are some people in certain environments, certain ecological settings where, you know, they can't just get knowledge and change really quickly. You know what I mean? There's a lot of other factors that go into that, you know what I mean? That we have to, I feel like, you know, do what we're doing now, and on a lot of other platforms, I'm pretty sure we're doing in our individual lives, is help influence those societal factors, you know, so then that path can be easier to get on, you know, that path to change, and, you know, how you approach women, how you approach your finances, how you approach your diet, you know, because right now the structure of our society doesn't make it that easy. You know what I mean? We have social media, we have the way movies are projecting things. So these youth, you know, especially I'm thinking about, because what I study right now primarily is inner city African-American male youth. So that's my wheelhouse. These kids that are in the hood, low SES, socioeconomic status, probably misdiagnosed with PTSD or not diagnosed with PTSD, living with a lot of trauma, whether it's like, because one thing that's big in our community as well, talking about how we treat women, there's a lot of sexual trauma that's not being addressed within our society, within our community as black men. A lot of us have been touched. A lot of us have been mistreated. A lot of us have been, what's the word? Shit, I want to get into it, but shit, a lot of us have been sodomized. A lot of us have been, I can't think about the word to M, but pretty much there's a lot of sexual abuse that has happened to a lot of black boys, and that perpetuates within how we think about treating women, within how we think about treating ourselves, within how we get into interpersonal relationships. And there's a lot of other compounded trauma, you know, like a lot of young black men don't have fathers in their life. They don't have men in their life, you know, so they have no true narrative of how to actually live a life as a man. You know, that's why I have that privilege where I did have, you know, my father in my life, but sparingly, in a sense of where he was in jail for a while. I saw him abuse my mom, and then I saw him come back into my life. I had to deal with like getting him, like, it's a lot of different things, you know. Then I know my other friend who he lost his father to gun violence when he was 5-6 years old. You know, he grew up around a lot of women, so he never really had that understanding of how to treat women. And I see how that's literally affecting him to this day. We're 32 years old. You know what I mean? So another thing is, I think a big thing to addressing all of this with sexual discipline was that we have to address our traumas. That's what I'm trying to get to. Like, until we actually address our traumas within the Black community, we're not going to be able to push past, you know, and get to a lot of these things that we want to get to, you know, because this is just a lot of cycles being repeated, you know, and I hate to say it, but a lot of it does come from slavery. You know, a lot of it does come from, you know, literally, we don't talk about it in our community. Men had to rape men during slavery. It just is what it is. We had to rape women during slavery. You know, those are things within our community, that healing that I feel like really needs to happen on different levels. Because it's being perpetuated. You know, Kendrick, I don't know if y'all really sat down and listened to Kendrick Lamar's last album. Greatness. You know, I sat and listened to that album in the dark at like 3 or 4 a.m. over and over and was crying because of not only thinking about things that I went through, but things that I know other Black boys have went through and Black men. Yeah, but that trauma assessment is important, because another thing that's happening in a lot of ways is people are trauma bonding. You know, people do it in their friendships, they do it in their relationships, you know, and instead of seeking solutions and actually identifying goals, like, okay, I want to make changes here, they just trauma bond. You get people that get in relationships together because, oh yeah, we never had a mother, we never had this, so I went through this and I went through that. It's like, yo, but are y'all fixing those problems? Or y'all just throwing them back and forth at each other and playing tennis? Because if not, that's not gonna help y'all. It's gonna come up in some other way. Exactly. Whether you realize it now or later, but it's gonna start surfacing, you know, and that's really important. That's why I challenge myself. I challenge a lot of my friends, and that's what my book is about, kind of wrapping that around. My next book coming out, and I'm going to connect it to a documentary. It's called The Little Black Boy I Buried. So it's literally talking about the traumas that I've been through, traumas that I know friends have been through, clients, youth that I've worked with, just pretty much telling my story, but also telling other people's stories, you know, through interviews, do different things, and literally embodying it through poetry and also this documentary that I'm gonna do. But it's heavy, you know. I mean, I've been working on it probably 4 years, because it's like every time I go at it, it's like I'm getting fucked up. Every time I read one of them poems in public, I start crying, because it's stuff that it's just there. It's layers. So like, I always challenge people. I was like, get to your layers, you know what I mean? Or you're never going to be able to really get to that success. And that's the thing. There's so much layers on our community that we refuse to identify, and we just abuse each other. We abuse our women, we abuse our kids, you know, instead of really looking like, okay, this trauma is usually coming from somewhere else. Let me identify it, get my shit together, and then, you know, apply all of those, you know, pillars that we were talking about before. But if not, it's just a farce, you know, and unfortunately, that's why we're seeing a lot of, you know, successful people, no matter how successful they are, they're fucked up, you know. And that's another thing I challenge the whole idea of, you know, chasing the bag and whatever, because you could chase that bag and still be fucked up, you know. One day wake up like, damn, I'm not happy. You got 3 million in your account, but you think about killing yourself. That I would rather have $3 in my account and be happy as fuck, because that happiness and that joy for life, that's the importance. Like, if we really want to talk about it, you know what I mean? Like, money, like, you, like, unless you're an Egyptian, whatever, you're not taking that with you. It depends on what you believe in. You know what I mean? Last time I checked, you're gonna have a diamond lace casket? That's cool, bro. That's all wavy. And another thing I think about as Black men that none of us said, but I've been thinking about is, what's your legacy? What's your legacy? You know what I mean? What are you really leaving behind? How are you really, what was your imprint in the world? That's one thing I think about every day. And it's partially an existential crisis where it's like, all right, I'm not gonna be here. You know what I mean? That's what pretty much having kids is as well. It's funny. You know what I mean? It's just extending yourself past death. But and not all that. That's just really a whole philosophical perspective. But it's interesting some of the things that we do, not realizing that all you're trying to do is be more than who you're going to be after death. And that's legacy. So some people focus on a financial legacy. Some people focus on, communal legacy. Some people focus on the creative. It's different legacies, but really thinking, what's your legacy? What's your impact going to be in the world? What I've been doing now is like sitting back and like, all right, what am I going to do with, so I'm now doing the whole African ancestry. I'm doing the maternal and the paternal. And what I'm going to do is when I get a actual like strong locale on where I come from, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna seek a blessing from somebody back there, from some type of tribe, family, organically seek something. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but do some more research on the last name that I can adopt. I'm not really trying to just go Moorish and do like a Bay or something like that. I have nothing against those people, but I feel like I want to do a little bit more to tie it in for me, because I feel like another thing is accessing our true power means accessing our truth as Black men. And I think that all ties into legacy, for you to really establish that legacy, like the people that we think about, like the Angela Davises, the Martins, the Malcolms, the Baldwins, the Dick Gregorys, all of these people. I feel like they went through a process and they had to establish truth within themselves, and that truth gave them power. And once they accessed that power, it was nothing but death that could stop them. And literally our forces that try to stop us, they know that. But you don't become a threat until you access your truth, which gives you that power. And you know what I mean? I think that's something that it kind of takes the conversation a little bit to a different thing. But I just feel like I had to say that to y'all, because it's like, it's a lot of us that, we dabble into being successful in a lot of different ways, but not really powerful. And that's why it goes back to that disruption. And it's like, if you realize that's why certain people, you kind of allowed to do certain things, you're allowed to whatever. But once you start saying certain things and moving a certain type of way, think about it. Kyrie, Kanye, why are these stoppages happening all of a sudden? Why? Because that truth, that power, you know what I mean? And that's that cultural change and that narrative control that literally shifts down to the youth. We talking about affecting the youth, I'm bringing it all the way back. That really impacts the youth and lets them gives them that formula. If we want to help change them, I think we got to give them formulas. And that formula is, hey, you got to access your truth, access that power, and then move through that power.
Rosxtta, I have two questions. So they're kind of the same thing, but when is the release date of your book? And then also the documentary?
I have no idea.
I was hoping you would not say that.
Yeah, honestly, I've been trying to force myself to write it, but every time I try, it doesn't work that way. So, but what I am going to do is I'm probably going to give myself a retreat week. I did that last year. I'm probably going to do it this year and another year. And about time then, I might have something by January, because I'm going to do it during my birth month. So I was born in January.
Okay.
So that's my goal, is to kind of have it ready within some January time. So it might be out by next month. The documentary is definitely not going to be out by next year. But the book at least will, and I'm going to keep working on the documentary and build on the book and keep letting people know a documentary is coming, probably have at least a teaser for it, something like that. But yeah, because it's also to the point where I'm working with just giving y'all a little snippet of how it's going to come. It's going to be I forgot the actual term for it. I've been doing a lot more research on film terms and shit. Film is actually really cool though, cinematography, but it's going to be having a lot of thematic elements in it, a lot of voiceovers. So it's going to be less like people sitting down and talking, or me talking, and more talking over images, talking over movements, talking over, feelings, emotions, and then getting people to sit and do random interviews where my poem would be relative to their experience, because that's my whole feeling I'm trying to get to. It is just not something that I created for me, but like these experiences are actually happening. Like, you know, like just writing about me surviving gang violence, you know, surviving my father being in prison, you know, young mother pregnancies, me being sexually assaulted, not having food growing up sometimes, you know. It's just like these lines and these threads that when people watch it, when they read certain things, I'm like, oh yes, I know somebody, or that's me, or that. And those are the type of connections that I'm trying to make, because, you know, it's funny because it's kind of just like Kendrick's album, you know, even though I've been working on this for a while, I'm pretty sure he's been working on that shit for a while too, though. But it's like, it's those moments that really sit you down and ground you, you know what I mean? And like that universality I'm trying to get to create this cohesion and create these conversations, because that's another thing between like book tours and pushing it out. My ultimate goal is to have people sit down and talk. Like that's my back end, the mental health, like go get help, talk to your family, talk to people, but really go get some help. You know what I mean? Go talk to a professional, you know, but also understand that there are levels of community healing where we need to talk to ourselves, you know, as Black men, openly, being transparent, being vulnerable, be open with your partner. You know, there's a lot of Black men that haven't told their wives and their girlfriends half of the things that's happened to them. And it comes up. The defense mechanisms, the frustrations, the lack of libido sometimes, that's all of that trauma that's in your head. You know what I mean? And it's not going to be able to be truly accessed and also rectified in a sense, like, and unless you be open with it, unless you be honest with yourself. And it's hard. I know it's hard.
Absolutely. I want to take a step back to something that Sherman, you started it off when you said it starts at home, and then you talked about the upbringing of young Black men specifically, because that's primarily what it's about. And I want to have a question about, well, a conversation about masculinity in itself, because I feel like a lot of the discourse about what masculinity is coming from everyone except from masculine men. And so, I mean, I'm just being real.
That's so true, though. Yeah. That's because we don't want to touch it, though. Honestly, like, I'm not even mad. Like, we don't want to touch it. But go ahead, my bad.
I don't think we can avoid it, though, because if we're gonna call out what's wrong, the wrong that men do, we need to have conversations, productive conversations, that talk about healthy masculinity and model that behavior. We can talk about what's wrong all day, but if we don't ever talk about what we need to be doing, it's not productive. And so all of us, it sounds like, grew up with the influence of our fathers in our lives in some capacity, whether they were directly in the home or they were an influence. And so I want to ask you all, did that affirm or contrast to the stereotypes of masculine role models?
Kinda, yeah. So actually, I grew up. So my father is from St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, and as you all know, the island people are very opposed to homosexuality in any way, shape, or form. So I actually grew up kind of homophobic in the sense that, like, you know, I looked at people that were gay and I looked down on them, or I looked at them as, you know, mentally sick or whatever you want to call it. You know what I'm saying? I had to reflect upon myself. One, it has nothing to do with me. You know what I'm saying? It's not my life choice. It's not up to me to say, oh, you should live your life this way or that way. You know what I'm saying? If you want to be a emasculated man, you know what I'm saying, then by all means do that. But at the end of the day, it wasn't affecting me. You know what I'm saying? I'm not the one that's with them. They're not, you know, pushing their beliefs on me. So why should I sit here and chastise them or judge them based off of decisions they made? So I had to, you know, do some self-reflection and say, you know what, that's not right. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't want anybody to look at me differently because of my skin color or whatever the case may be. So I'm not going to look at somebody differently because of their sexual preference. You know what I'm saying? It's none of my business, got nothing to do with me. But as far as masculinity is concerned, you know, I feel like it, I mean, are we talking like masculinity in the sense like what a true man is, or are we talking like in the sense like what's the line between masculinity and like toxic masculinity? Like where are we trying to like discern here?
Okay, so my question was more so geared towards the presence of your
Mhm.
father in your life. Did that affirm or contrast to the stereotypes of what masculinity is? So with
Gotcha.
the lack of emotional presence, the
Mhm.
person who they're just pretty much there to provide financial stability within the family, and like the dumbed down version that we're often presented with.
Yeah. It kind of, yeah. So it kind of fucked me up, bro, honestly, because I grew up, not being able to cry, you know what I'm saying? Because I had to be, tough. I had to be a man, not cry and stuff like that. And I had really become out of tune with my emotions. So my emotional intelligence was very low. You know what I'm saying? So when I got in relationships, that stifled me in the sense that I wasn't able to empathize with the woman. I wasn't able to see her perspective on why I should do certain things or put thought into certain things. I'm like, okay, well, yes, I love you, I love you, but why do I have to show you that I love you? You know what I'm saying? Like things like that. Like I wasn't grasping those concepts. So I had to learn myself, through trials and tribulations in relationships, unfortunately, how to be more emotionally adept in the sense that I can, level with them more emotionally. Because I think that there is a line that a man should always teeter on, you know what I'm saying? Like obviously you should be masculine, you should, embody all of those things of what a man embodies, whether that's, leading from the front, whether that's providing, whether that's, changing oil on a car, you know what I'm saying? Doing stuff around the house, whatever the case may be, whatever your definition of man is, you should follow that, but you should also be in touch and in tune with your emotions and your spirituality, because if you're not going to have a successful relationship, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? Because you have to be able to understand where the woman is coming from. You have to understand her level of emotional intellect. And if we want to get love language and stuff like that, that's a whole nother discussion. You know what I'm saying? But, women respond differently to different things. You know what I'm saying? Like every woman is different and every woman receives love differently and wants to be loved differently. So being able to understand that as a man, I think is extremely important. And I unfortunately wasn't taught that growing up because of, how my father had raised me. And that's no knock to him. Like I said, I was the first child. I was a trial period. They were still learning too how to be parents. So I'm not going to sit here and blame them for anything. But yeah, that's just my personal take on that.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure.
I really do appreciate that. I don't want to let that go understated. My experience with growing up with my father, my parents were together for most of my life. They divorced when I was in college, junior, so fairly recent. But the presence of my father, I didn't have that experience with having to tone down emotions. And that's one of the things that I will say that I applaud the male role models I had in my life, whether it be my father and then my grandfather later on, in the fact of they display what it was to be a man in its full totality of the spectrum. So I got to see my father express a full plethora of emotions, and he helped coach me through that process. And of course, you have your well, I had my mom too, but I'm speaking about the man, the masculine, in this specific example. And it's fairly commonplace with my dad. I remember when we was young, he would always tell us, "I love you." Still does to this day. It's nothing for him to kiss me or my sister on the cheek when he sees us when we get him from the airport. Like that's our dad. We love him. And so we were always very open with our emotions, and I appreciate that because I see that that's not a privilege, not a blessing that everybody was fortunate enough to have. And that was a direct contrast because whenever people would talk about having to suppress their emotions and having men be this one-dimensional archetype, I couldn't relate to that. I didn't see that. That wasn't what was modeled to me as I grew up, and that was out of the norm. And so having a more informed perspective, because it's so easy to have that first person view of, okay, this is what reality is. But when I talk to Sherman, you're comfortable enough to give me insight into your world and share your experience and the other people like that. It's really eye-opening. And so I think that we do have healthy role models in our community, and we we just need to build upon the foundation that the previous generations gave us to keep the baton going forward.
Yeah, for sure.
Did any of you, Josh, Des, Rosxtta, feel inclined to follow up on that question?
Yeah, I think it was both for me, honestly.
It affirmed and contrasted.
Yeah, I think one thing too, I would be curious to know everyone's definition of masculinity as well. But I am going to try to answer your question first.
Okay.
But yeah, that because my father, like I've seen a lot of different, I guess, stages of my father at this point. Now I'm being I'm 32 years old. You know, from him being, you know, not in my life in jail, you know, to being in my life, trying to come into my life as this super authoritarian, not understanding that's not what I needed at that time. So it created this real big, it was just resistance, you know, instead of like openness to build a relationship. It created this resistance for me. And then now he's like, there's a little distance, so the relationship is different. You know, I'm able to like say certain things, just move a certain type of way, like, hey, it is what it is, like, you know, you don't pay my bills type shit. And I fought really hard to get to that point, but now we have this relationship where it's growing, and you know, him and my mother still support me and doing different things, but now it's still kind of getting back to that point where like, okay, focusing more on the emotional side, where it's like, yes, you know, and you know, I'm thankful he definitely tells me he loves me now. We have this, it's better than what it used to be, but it's still other things that are layered in there where it's like, okay, you know, I need you to be completely open, you know, because I see certain things, especially with the education I have now, the experience, you know, I see it, you know, are you going to be open about it? I think that's really important for, at least I could be honest about it, important for sons to see their fathers to be a certain type of way, because that's your first true definition of a man. And for a while, unless some other person kind of takes that role, or that lasts, like it just lasts, like not saying that's going to be your only rubric to compare a man to, but it's kind of always going to click some type of way. So I think I've definitely seen two sides, especially where like sometimes how he treated my mother, speaking, you know, arguing, not really being able to, like Sherm said, tap into those emotions. So I've realized how that's developed into me to being guarded, you know, or one thing I do now where my parents argued a lot, like really, really bad arguments, like to the point where I had to learn how to put myself to sleep when I was younger because I just didn't want to like consume all of that. And now, like some of my early relationships, like I got into it with a lot of people. We were arguing really bad arguments. But then when I started getting with, you know, some people who were like, hey, like, I'm not trying to argue, like, we're going to communicate, we're going to talk. That really helped me like reframe and think about things. But for a while, even now, it's hard to adjust. So what I do now is when I get heated, upset, I have to like spend time away and process my shit and then come back and talk. But a lot of women, they can't handle that. You know, they cannot handle that. You know what I mean? You're shutting down, you're stonewalling, you're, you know, ignoring me. But it's like, nah, bro, I just need to process all of this before I dump it, because I know if I dump it on you right now, one, I'm probably not saying what I really want to say, and two, you're not going to take it a certain type of way, you know, and it's just going to create more complications. So understanding how a lot of what I'm doing now is just learning how to, for lack of a better word, not be my father. You know what I mean? I hate to like put it in that way, but that's what it is. You know what I mean?
So you also mentioned that you wanted to discuss what masculinity was, and that's something that
I'm always curious.
is often viewed, the way that I see it is very nebulous for a lot of people.
Mhm.
It's a ever expanding definition, ever contracting. There's no finite definition unless you like look at a literal word, like what it is to be a man. Okay, then you have to ask, okay, so what's that? But the way that I always viewed masculinity was firm. And so a lot of people, if you look at it through the negative perspective and talk about what toxic masculinity is, which is a common buzzword, it's a common topic, they'll talk about the oppressive force, the
Mhm.
aggression, they'll talk about that. What I think the focus should be on is healthy masculinity. It's firm, it's strong, but it's not overbearing. It's in the same way that it's like an embrace, it's like a handshake, for example. It's warmly, you know the person is there, they're supporting you, but it's not crushing. And I think that's the best analogy that I have to describe how I see masculinity. It's not my will, it's not my ability to exert my will on another human being, specifically a woman. That's not what it is. It's the ability to support. Of course, to have those other facets of that, to be a provider, to be a protector, those kinds of things. But to be able to support effectively and then use my wisdom to assess what that is.
Okay.
Off the cuff.
Yeah. For me, it's kind of similar to what you said, Brian. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me, as far as being a man, is being true to yourself. You know what I'm saying? I feel like any man that's true to themselves is a true man in my book, because if you aren't true with yourself, you can't hope to provide, you can't hope to lead, you can't hope to be the head of a household. You know what I'm saying? So being true to who you are, I think, is first and foremost the most important characteristic of a man. And I think also being able to personify everything that makes you who you are, whether that be emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically. You know what I'm saying? You should be able to personify all of those things so it can be received by everybody around you. And that's going to then imprint that influence that you have as a man and make people aspire to want to, one, be around you, and two, be like you. You know what I'm saying? Especially from a child's perspective. You know what I'm saying? You want to imprint that in them, that this is what a man is. This is what you should strive to be like. And also relegate that with, okay, you don't have to be me though. You can be better than me. You can be a different version of me, but you do not have to be me. You know what I'm saying? I think that's very important too, when allowing the child to have a sense of identity. Because if you don't do that, they're gonna grow up resenting you, in my opinion, because now they're gonna be oppressed in the sense that, okay, I don't get to do what I want to do. I don't get to be who I want to be because you want me to be like you. So being true to yourself, being able to imprint what it is to be a man, and not putting that expectation over the child's head that this is what it is to be a man and you have to be this way. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody's definition of being a man, in my opinion, I think is probably different in certain aspects. You know what I'm saying? There's no one clear, concise, oh, this is what a man is. You know what I'm saying? It's open to interpretation, I feel like.
Des, I know this is something that we talked about before. Would you want to share your thoughts on that?
Man, I don't even know. I've really been a listener, because there's a lot of things that's been said, brilliantly by, Rosxtta and Sherman, that have really put me in the more of a reflective state, not in that advocate state that I normally am, to where I can just go off the cuff. I don't want to say I don't know, man, because I'm a young pops, and what I can say about being a really young father is that I do have a bit of, what Rosxtta was talking about, was like with resentment, but just as Sherman said as well, I was my dad's first child. I was my mom's second, and so I had two completely different childhoods in one. I'm my mom's second, so she knows, through just navigation of the first, things to do. And then I'm my dad's first. And, my dad, he knew his father, but his father wasn't, active in his life. So I was the byproduct of someone trying to figure it out on the cuff. And I really just see myself in that same boat. I had my son at 22 trying to figure it out on the cuff. And so what I've really learned over the past, 5.5, almost 6 years, is that, you know, bit of masculinity is, and I think it could tap into the feminine as well, is like showing up every day, being multidimensional, being firm in your stance, you know, being very disciplined, because the rules that you set up for yourself are going to be the same rules that your son set up in, like Rosxtta was talking about legacy. You know, discipline is one of those things, if done correctly, is going to have a legacy impact. Because I really, as great as my parents were, I didn't go on a straight path right out of high school. Like I smoked, I drank, all like everybody else, way before they were supposed to. But a bit of mine was that I lived in Japan for 3 years, and in the time that I was living in Japan, my dad was always out to sea, and I was always with my mom. And so with my mom, I had immense freedom. You know, out late, go hang out with any chick, go to the, you know, basketball court at any given time. And then, just like Rosxtta said, that authoritative figure or authoritarian figure, you know, when we came back to the States, it was like cold water, culture shock. And so my dad and I, we really had a very like deep rooted rift with each other, because I think as a parent, you always want to see your child do better than you do. And the thing is that there's this very big, you know, generational flaw where you try and give your kid everything you didn't have, instead of teaching them how to get everything you didn't have. And so, you know, my dad and I, we had that really big rift until I had my son, because obviously I've in my 20s, I ended up getting or not even my 20s, I think I was 19. I had a possession of marijuana charge before it was legal in Virginia, and just shit like that, to where I was fucking up my B and C plan if, you know, going to law school didn't work out. And so it was really one of those things to where, to answer the original question, yes, like it fit my dad fit the, you know, typical masculine man. You know, he wanted things done a certain way. You know, your bed had to be made this way, towels needed to be folded this way, you need to be in the house at a certain time, respect my house first and foremost. And then, you know, there was the teaching components as well. You know, taught me how to change my oil, you know, the basic fundamentals of finance, how to be a independent man absent of, you know, the need for authority. Like, it was really, my dad was one of those guys that tried to teach you how to be self-sufficient to a point of you being self-sufficient. And then once you had that, you know, certificate of self-sufficiency, then it was up to you to, you know, unlock those next levels of life. And so, yeah, that definitely was the atypical. Just like Sherman said, you know, homophobia. You know, my dad was the same way when I was young. Like, I don't think I ever. My mom has always been very, very open. She's a southern woman, so her view of homophobia was in the same line, but she was never very blatant with it. And then my dad was like, if we went into Banana Republic in the early 2000s and someone was talking very flamboyant, you know, he was looking over at him and you know, nudging me as well, and you know, we were getting a little laugh out of it. So, you know, I've definitely seen him become more progressive in thought as well, and I think that's another key component of masculine, or just human nature in itself, being progressive in thought, like identifying what works and building on that, but then also identifying what doesn't work. And then, like I was talking about with the trading, you know, how trading has impacted my psychology, figuring out what didn't work, why it didn't work, and then, you know, navigate that path better in life. So, you know, I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination when it comes to being a father, but you know, a lot of the things that you guys have said thus far, like it's really hitting home, because it puts into perspective how careful I need to be with my words. Like, my son is speaks a lot more now, but my son for the first 4 years was nonverbal autistic, still is autistic, but he talks a lot more now. And as I mentioned before we came on air, redundancy is my, like, I can't stand redundancy, but having a child on the spectrum, it is very redundant. You have to teach the same thing over and over and over and over again. And so I have to keep in mind that, like, words are powerful. And so if I am ever short, I need to apologize. Like, that has to be a given. Anytime I raise my voice, anytime, you know, I act out of character of the man that I'm trying to envision for him, even with, you know, his deficiencies, I'm still acknowledging where I'm wrong, letting him, have that relationship that I didn't have at his age, but nevertheless, it's done out of genuineness. Like, I'm not saying, hey, I'm doing this because my dad didn't do it. I'm saying, hey, I'm doing this because I understood how negatively it impacted me, not knowing how to properly, dissect my emotions. I think we've all said the same thing. Like, Rosxtta, you were on the opposite end. You heard your parents argue. I never heard my parents argue, so I didn't know how to navigate, arguments with females when I was in, high school or when I got into college. Like, I was 0 to 100 because I had no emotional intelligence whatsoever. You said something and it pissed me off, I wanted to hurt your feelings. I didn't care how I hurt your feelings. The end goal was to hurt your feelings. And so there's a lot of things that I really had to navigate because my dad's a hothead. Like, he was the same way. You piss him off, you are going to hear it. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You say something out of turn, you get dealt with. And so I had that same viewpoint until really recently. And that was like when I talked about, one of the foundational components, accountability, understanding that I didn't swing the hardest, but I still swung, and really like thinking twice, saying once. The famous saying, measure twice, cut once. Like, I really implemented that with just about everything that I do, whether it's what I say, how I say it. And then, of course, I really do try and take more ownership on the delivery as well. Because I know we had a prior conversation on the podcast where, are we accountable for how someone interprets our words? Like, yes, I said one thing, but your interpretation of how I said it does matter to an extent. So, a little bit off topic, but I think it all points in it, because I think what we're doing here is we're not just, creating men in our image. Like, we're also being very, very open and honest, because I've never had a conversation about, of this magnitude, hearing it and saying it, of being a young Black man and, the trials and tribulations you go through, not necessarily just from a physical standpoint, but from an emotional and spiritual standpoint as well. I mean, that's definitely an earth-shattering conversation for me, because I've never gone this in depth. And like I said, Rosxtta, I appreciate you a lot, because it's like it definitely is like that mirror shattering moment to where, like, okay, I'm acknowledging everything that I've done, both good and bad. Now it's time to, get on the hands and knees and start doing the hard work.
Mm-hmm. I think I'll try to be quick. I think as far as the definition of masculine, I simply have having a proper strength, courage, and confidence and discipline to lead in the society or the situation. But really, for me, I don't think about it that much, because ever since I was younger, I was always the one that knew how to express their emotions. I would go and cry if I needed to cry. And going into the next question about how our dad was, my dad was basically how you guys' dad was, not really Brian, because he had the most supportive dad, it seems, but how you guys' dad was when it comes to the traditional Black dad, very stern, very big on discipline. Say it again.
There was definitely elements of that. I ain't saying I ain't get my ass.
Oh, okay.
I'm not gonna act like my parents were therapists or anything like that. I'm saying when it came to seeing the spectrum of healthy emotional expression, and then sometimes unhealthy, I had a wide array to learn from, is what I'm saying.
No, okay.
But there was I did see shades at times where it was the traditional, it's because I said it's this way. I damn sure got that. I'm not gonna act like I did.
Yeah.
But my dad was more reasonable than what a lot of people would expect, though.
Oh yeah. My dad was the traditional Black dad, and kind of like Rosxtta, I heard my parents argue, so that affected me. But at the same time, I think with me being the youngest, I was able to look, and I said this at least 2 other times on this podcast, but me being the youngest, I was able to look at my siblings and see what they was doing wrong and how my parents handled how they was dealing with them. And I kind of learned that from myself. And I picked that up, and I was like, okay, I shouldn't be able to do this. Like, my dad never told me to open the door for women. I just figured that out on myself. Like, I just like, oh, I should open door for women, being the man in the relationship, or so forth, or for whatever, just a random woman on the street, because I do that all the time too. But like he never told me to do it. I just picked it up myself and I think part of that is me just being the youngest, and me just looking at and me be able to decipher, okay, that's not right. Morally, we should be doing it this way or doing it another way. So that was really how my parents were. Just the traditional, basically the same beliefs, stern, homophobic, same thing basically. No real difference. And the emotion part, yeah, my dad wasn't big on like showing emotion, but I picked it up myself that, oh, I it's okay to show emotion.
Yeah, that's dope.
Did you guys have anything else? Who, me?
Yeah, what would you attribute that to?
Just realizing that that's not the right way.
Well, being more open about expressing your emotions.
I don't know. I think it was just deciphering that it was okay to healthily express emotions, because a lot of the things that people deem like bad in society or look down upon in society is just like and it goes back to what I said about understanding. I'm just such an understanding person. I get a lot of the things that people do, so it goes back to I can easily decipher, okay, that's not right. I should be able to do it another way. So I think it really just went back to maybe I was born with it. It's like something that's inside me that was like, oh no, I don't know. And that's the funny thing is like the whole truth thing, because Rosxtta was talking about it. That's one of the things that got me into Malcolm X. Aside from, of course, being like, of course, a black advocate, like the fact that he realized that what he was saying was wrong, and then he went back. My favorite Malcolm X is 1965 Malcolm X. After Mecca Malcolm X, Black nationalism Malcolm X. The fact that he realized what he was saying was wrong, and he went back, fixed it, took accountability, took responsibility, and that's really one of the big reasons why I went to Malcolm X, and really Muhammad Ali too, because mainly the military and the Vietnam thing. But I think it was just, I think I was just born with it to decipher, okay, morally, we shouldn't be doing this. We should be going about the truth, basically. You guys have anything else?
No, I think we covered a lot, man. That was dope.
Definitely a good way to start season 6. Definitely. But I want to thank Rosxtta and Sherman, of course, for coming on the podcast. Of course, Sherman's second time and Rosxtta's first time, hopefully, was great. Of course, we setting up part 2, so definitely come back.
Yeah, I actually have a recommendation. We've been talking about quite a lot. I think it goes perfectly into the conversation, but it's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I actually just started it, and on the first chapter. I started it this past week, and I'm hooked on the first chapter. We've done a lot of I ain't gonna say joint reading, but we've shared a lot of titles over the past 3 or 4 months since we haven't been recording, and so I think we'll definitely have some gems for you guys. It'll be an audiobook, so if you have Audible, I'll have some gems from that. But we're gonna kick off season 6 with Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Okay.
All right. If you guys like the discussion, don't forget the like button. Also share it, why not? We're gonna see you guys next week. Peace.